Hello class, let's do a bunch of array stuff. This stuff isn't terrible, but until you've done a few, it'll look a little terrible. Just getting used to it. Keep in mind, arrays are just kind of like rows of variables. Treat array elements just like variables, because they are. They're just kind of like variables in a row of the same type. So anyway, for this guy, we just want to check if the first thing is a 6 or the last thing is a 6. So we just basically, we'd treat it the same way we'd do a variable. Like if we wanted to see that x equaled 6 or y equaled 6, you'd know how to do that, right? It's exactly the same thing, except we need to use array indexes to find the element. So we're going to write the name of our array, which is nums. So do nums, and the first element is at index 0, just like strings. And instead of y, we want the last element. Now for the last element, just like strings, we're going to have to use the length of the array to find the last element. Remember with strings, the last element was, or the last character was string at index strings.length -1. In the exact same way, this is at nums.length -1. That's its index. So this is just a number equal to the length of the array -1. For the first one, the length of the array is 3. So 3 minus 1 is 2. We're looking for the thing at index 2. For this guy, the length of the array is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we're looking for the thing at index 3. Remember, they start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're checking if that guy is a 6, because it's the last element. One thing to note, with strings, length is a method. So the person who wrote the strings class had length as a method. That's why it's got the bracket. Whoever made arrays made it a public variable, which we'll get into later. No brackets, because it's just a variable. Anyway, so no brackets there. And that's it. So that's the first guy. Let's do the next. All right, same first last, pretty much exactly the same question, same idea, except we're just checking if the first and last elements are equal. So again, we can do it one line. We want to check that the first element, nums at index 0, that's the first element, is equal to the last element. So we get the last element exactly the same way as before. We got to use nums.length -1, and exactly the same idea as strings. Do that, and we're gold. Nice and easy. Oh, what did I screw up? It's too short. So we need a little if statement, or we could just have a guard. Return, it's got to be length 1 or more. So we'll just say nums.length is greater than or equal to 1. And so this is kind of our guard, our short circuit expression evaluation. So this will be checked first. If it's false, it doesn't even need to check this, so we won't run into our array index out of bounds error by trying to check things that aren't there. So if we do this now, we should get them all, which we do. Excellent. Let's go on to the next one. Make pi. I really like this one. If you look at my notes, you might have been like, hey, why would I ever make an array kind of like int array pi equals new int array, and then like this. Why would I ever do that? Usually you don't, because you can just, again, do int array pi. You can just do this, and that works, but this is actually very useful, because if you ever don't need to make a reference for your thing, so right now we could totally just do return pi and we're done. We're gold. That would work. This also works, but so does this. if ever we don't need to make a reference to our variable, we just want to return it immediately, use it in a function immediately, use it to make something else immediately, we can just do this. We wouldn't be able to do that because it doesn't know the array type, but we can do this because there's no ambiguity here. It knows we want to make a new int array with the contents 3, 1, and 4. Bam, we're done. One line. That's all we need. All right, let's try next sucker. Common int, 2 arrays, int A and B, return true if they have the same first element or the same last element. And they're both long enough that we don't have to check for it. So we can do this in one line too. This is just more array indexing. Return A0 equals B0. So the first element of A equals the first element of B. Is it true? And then we want to check that, or is the last element the same? Remember the last element, we need to check whatever the length of the string minus 1 is to get the right index for the last element. So we'll just do a.length to get the length of it, and then minus 1 so it's in range and the last element. And we want to check that the last element of A is equal to the last element of B. And that's it. That's all we need. We just check first elements are equal, just the things at index 0, and the last elements are equal, which again is always the length of the array minus 1. So it's just a number. Keep in mind a.length minus 1. If this is A, its length is 3, minus 1 is 2, and it has indexes 0, 1, and 2, 2 being the last. Perfect. And that works no matter how long it is. All right, let's do one more and then call it. So sum3. We know we just want to add up all the elements. This is super easy. We just got to do, since we're guaranteed to have an array of length 3, we could just return the first element plus the second element, which is at index 1, plus the third element, which is at index 2. Done. Bam. Maybe we'll do one more because that was quick. All right, rotate left. So we want to do this rotated left. We can use the same trick we did with a make pi to do this in one line. We want to return a new int array. We don't really need to make a reference for it. And we don't want to mess with nums because then we'd overwrite the elements. So without making a temporary variable, we couldn't keep all elements, we couldn't start moving them around and still keep all of them, because as soon as we copied one thing to another area, we'd lose our 2. Let's say we want to move our 3, or want to move our 3 right here. That would delete the 2 and we wouldn't have the reference for the 2. So it's impossible to do without a temporary variable. But why don't we do it in one line? So in this case, we're making a new int array, but as our first element, we want the element, the second element of nums. For our second element, we want the third element of nums, which is at index 2. And for our last element, we want the thing that was the first element of nums, the thing at index 0. Do that, and we are done. And thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.